What the Mum podcast. My name is Maria Newman and I will be your host. Every mum to be knows that as soon as she becomes a mum, her world will change forever. Everyone is keen to give you advice based on their own experiences. Other mums delight in sharing their horror stories so that new mums are better prepared for what might happen. The lack of sleep, feeling exhausted most of the time, living in bodies with even more wobbly bits and never having any privacy. But everyone's story is unique. Everyone's experience is personal. On this podcast, I will be sharing real stories told by mums like you and I about their experience of motherhood and how life changes when you become a mum. This podcast is about showing you that you're not alone. We may not be in the same boat, but we are experiencing a similar storm. I hope these stories will inspire you to do what you want, be who you want to be. Anything is possible if you really want it and if it is really important to you. If you want to find out more about me and who I am, check out my website, mummyinabreak.co.uk. However, for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast episode. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. During this podcast series, I will be interviewing 6 awesome women who will be sharing their mum stories. My guest today is Joanna, who is a wellness advocate and tech VA specialising in helping wellness coaches to scale their business. But she's also a mum who's juggled many aspects of being a mum, from a single mum to being an older mum. Thanks for joining me today, Joanna.
You're welcome. Nice to be here.
Yay! So, Joanna, who is Joanna?
Okay, so Joanna is a very lucky person. I am a mum to 3 and a janana to three little people that we collectively call the littles. I grew up in a blended family, which has its own positives and negatives, but it prepared me for the life I've built today. I also traveled a lot when I was younger between Bermuda and England and Canada. And I think traveling opens your eyes to the ways other people do things, to the differences, but more importantly, the similarities that we all have as family units, whatever that family unit is to you. And as a mum, I've found the awareness of knowing that actually the person that I'm talking to, whether it's a little or an adult, may not have the perspective on things that I do, has been, sometimes it's harder to remember that, but it is having that inner knowledge that everybody doesn't see things from the same perspective really helps as a parent.
I think that is an amazing nugget of gold, because we unconsciously make assumptions.
Yeah.
But recognizing that everybody has their own view of reality and we need to meet them at the point at which they're at.
Exactly.
It makes life easier, doesn't it?
It does. And I think one of the most awful phrases in the English language is common sense, because it's only common if you've lived it or experienced it. So if you've come from 2 different places and you say, well, that's common sense, it is to you. To the person you're talking about or speaking to, it may not be at all common sense.
I've never heard it from that perspective.
Yeah.
I used to always say that common sense is not common.
Exactly.
That is a great way of saying it. It
Yeah.
is all about your lived experience
and
what you've gone through.
That's right.
I like it.
Yeah.
So, did you always know then that you wanted to be a mum?
No, I did not. I was told at 16 that because of various issues, I would never be a mum. So it was at 16, it was kind of taken off the table, wasn't in my future plans, kind of wasn't really bothered about it, because I'm in a group of 15 grandchildren, like in my bandwidth, as it were, within our family. So I was always kind of either the end of the group or doing a lot of babysitting. So being told at 16 I'd never have kids, I was so fine with that. Didn't even bother me. And then in my early 20s, I found out that wasn't the truth and I was going to be a mum. And even though it was an incredibly rocky pregnancy and touch and go it a few times, I eventually had my daughter. So that was a blessing that I never thought I would experience. As a single mom, it was so the first 14 years, it was just her and I, which was great. I mean, it was tumultuous, because she is and was a very determined and creative person. Um, and as you can imagine, using those euphemisms, the toddlers in the teen years were a stretch of my sense of humor, but we did it. We're still alive to tell the tale. Um, and then I went on to have two boys later on, and that was where the older mum comes in. I had my first son when I was in my mid 30s, and my second son when I was just gone 40. So both of them were a bit of a shock, given that I was told at 16 I'd never have children, or carry them to term was actually the truer phrasing. But yeah, it's been fortuitous. Hadn't planned it, never thought I would be, and I enjoy it so much more because despite the odds, I have three lovely children. So yeah, didn't plan it, but it's been a good journey. All in all, there were some rough patches, but it's been a good journey. Yeah.
There will always be challenges, won't there?
There will be. Definitely will be. Definitely will be.
So because there's obviously a bit of an age gap, how did you prepare yourself from, having raised your daughter to a certain age and then going, right, I've got to start again? Because we forget, don't we?
Yes, we do.
My children are only about 2.5 years difference.
Yeah.
And I forgot.
Yeah. So between my daughter and my first son, there are 14 years, which he wasn't planned. It was a fortuitous mishap, dare I say. I always say the pregnancy wasn't planned, but the birth was, because he was very much wanted by the time he arrived. It was a shock to every fiber in my being, because even though my daughter was a tomboy like I was, there is no connection to having a boy in your household to having a girl. Yes, after they get to the toddler age, when they've gone from like blobs to little people, that little person that's a boy is so dramatically different from anything a girl ever is or was. The inability to sit still, the inability to walk in straight lines, the my son got all his teeth very early, so he actually didn't talk at all, no babbling, no sound, until he was gone too. And then it kind of erupted into sentences, but not very clear sentences. So there was always a bit of a communication issue on top of the normal challenges you generally experience with boys. But the noise and the mess that a boy brings to the equation, beyond me. I completely, by the time he was 3, gave up on the fantasy of having a clean bathroom ever again, because it was just enjoy the 30 seconds right after you've cleaned it and then move on with life, because that's it. It's done until the next time you clean it. So I thought I was prepared, because this is the naivety. Oh, I've done this before. How hard can it be? Yes, I'm 14 years older, but I'm still fit. I'm still in my own home. I have all these pluses. How naive can you be, right? Because like you said, a 2-year difference is quite incredible. 14 years was a shock to the system. And then to have a child that was so radically different on so many levels was even harder. My daughter has always been very chatty, so you always knew where she was, and there was always a running dialogue of what she was doing, because she would play talk, whatever she was doing, she was kind of monologuing the journey. Whereas my son was very quiet, but mischievous in his own way. He's always been into anything with wheels, motorsports, bikes, trucks. Every birthday cake that had a car on the top, the wheels actually had to move as part of the decoration. Every single Halloween costume has been some form of a car. I've built so many Lightning McQueens out of different boxes. I'm actually an expert on my Lightning McQueen, I'm sure. But it was a different thing. And then being older, you have to kind of factor in that even though you're fit, you're also 14 years more set in your ways. Your sleeping patterns are 14 years older. You rebound slightly slower from up a night with a teething child or a sick child than you did when you were in your 20s. And then when I had my third child at 42, I wasn't even sure I could do it. Wasn't sure I could do it. I thought, great. So now I have a 6-year-old, and by then a 20-year-old who was pretty much self-sufficient. Um, and that was interesting, to be that much older, and also all the fears of being an older mum while you're pregnant, or the extra testing, or the more frequent visits, prenatal visits, was an emotional and mental challenge. But they're here, and they're healthy for all intents and purposes. The boys are actually both neurodiverse. So my older son is dyslexic, the younger is autistic, which meant that was a different set of parenting skills I had to figure out. Personally, and this kind of spills over into my business, I am an organization freak. I like to have things run a certain way, which helps with an autistic child, but his level of need of organization is that much higher. And in a blended family with different ages and people going off in different directions, it's definitely something that I've had to focus on a bit more than I have in the past. Things like, boys, as we know, are voracious eaters, so they can wipe through a snack cupboard in an afternoon. So having a list of what snacks are available and saying you can have one from each column, and then him marking down what he's eaten, was something that works well. So then I know in advance what's available, what I have to replenish, without at that last one, oh my God, there's no snacks, and having a meltdown at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think one of the biggest challenges with the age gap has been having a 2-year-old and a 15, 16-year-old at the same time. That was 18 months when I was quite ready to be snatched by aliens. Like, I'm done. I'm not coming home. I'm not picking anybody up after school because I really can't face the dynamics. So that was a tough year and a half. But now they're dare I say 30, 17, and 11. They have a really great relationship. I was helping a family member with a rough really chronic health scare, and my daughter was able to take care of her brothers, so I could drop everything and help this friend through their health crisis. So that was positive. And then now that my daughter has children, the relationship that my 11-year-old has with what are effectively his nephews and niece is absolutely gorgeous. They think the sun shines out of him because he's a super cool Lego building Uncle Jesse, So, I mean, it's what I know. So my aunts are 10, 15 years older. I have a younger brother that's 10 years my junior. So I've only ever known these large gaps in families. But I think it's what you make of it. And in our case, it works well, because there's always a sounding board that's a different perspective on what you're thinking or going through. But yeah, it works. It is tumultuous, slightly chaotic, but also lots of fun.
I love what you were saying about the differences between your daughter and your son. And I can relate in the sense of my eldest is a girl and my youngest is a boy. And they have the characteristics that you were talking about, in the sense of Leah is quite calm. She knows where she's going. Everything sort of has a logic. Whereas, oh my goodness, with my son, I needed eyes in the back of my head, which is what I didn't have to have with Leah, because he would be, I'd lose him within a second.
Yes, I know.
Or he'd
How do they do that?
I don't know. Or he'd jump on me, and I'd be like, well, I've just crouched down to pick something up, and all of a sudden I've got a child on my back.
Yeah.
Which is not what Leah was like at all. So yeah, the differences in boys and girls, and we're generalizing based on our experience. But yes, that was like putting the disrupted sleep to one side. Yeah, they are just so different.
I know. I mean, my daughter was a very bouncy child, and she's a climber. There's a great story I tell. She had these a little outdoor gymnasium, and she jumped off it every day after school and did somersaults. And one day she actually broke her elbow. We didn't know. We thought she just knocked it. Turned out she had to have a cast for 8 weeks. Went into hospital, had the arm set. The doctor said, oh, she'll be knocked unconscious for a good 12 hours with the anesthetic. When you go home, shower, come back, she'll be coming around. Did that, came back, no child in the crib. They had lost a toddler, lost a 2-year-old with a cast on her arm. And then I hear, so I'm like trying to quietly not panic, walking down the hospital floor, and I hear a clunk, clunk, clunk. Go into the playroom to find my toddler with her arm in a cast from shoulder to wrist, climbing up the bookshelf because she wanted the teddy that was on the top shelf. So I thought I was prepared for boys because of this, this trait in my daughter. But like you said, a boy can disappear in a 30-second gap and then put his life in peril in just 30 seconds on a regular basis. And they don't know. They don't know. There's a reason all these memes on Instagram and Facebook are such that it's a boy going off a hill on a skateboard with nothing protective, jumping off buildings with nothing, like a wish and a prayer that it works out. I know, it's crazy. Luckily, my youngest son is actually the quietest of the three. He's noisy, and that there's a constant stream of noise, white noise that he makes for himself. But he's very risk averse, whereas my older son doesn't even understand the word risk. It's not in his vocabulary. But yeah, they're huge. They're huge divide. I've not been ever a gender biased parent. So I'm the oldest in my sibling group, and my dad wanted a boy first, as you did back then. So I'm a great mechanic. I have my own set of power tools. I've never been told, no, you can't do that because you're a girl. But even with all that, and that's how I've raised the kids, but even with all that, there is definitely a psychological thinking pattern difference with boys and girls. They're just two different things.
It is. It's sugar and spice, completely different.
Definitely.
So if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice, and let's pick out some particular points. So I'm going to take you back first of all to when you were 16 and you were told,
yes,
no children. What advice would you give yourself back then, having lived?
I was a little disappointed because obviously at that time that was the expectation of girls: get married, have children, maybe have a career, but not necessarily. And even though I grew up in a very matriarchal society, that was still the subliminal messages we received. So I was disappointed, but then I thought, well, if that's off the table, let's do something completely different. And I made choices at 16 on the understanding I would never have to be, I'd never be having a dependent. So, I didn't take education seriously because I thought I never really have to have a job. I can just flip from one thing to another because I don't have to be a grown-up in my head. Because to me, having children was being a grown-up. So I think that would be something I'd probably take a bit more seriously and position myself better so that when I did become a parent, I had a bit more life experience. It was easier for me to further my career because I had taken it seriously up until that point, because before that I didn't. And I always say that having my daughter was my anchor. She didn't tie me down, but she like a hot air balloon in its ballast. I could still float free, but I had a better direction. I made better decisions after having her than I did before. So that would be something I'd encourage my 16-year-old self to think about a bit better. Like, let's look at long-term decision making rather than in the moment decision making.
And so if you could then travel back before you knew you were pregnant with your first son, what advice would you give yourself?
Brace yourself, I think it would be. Throw everything out the door that you think you know about parenting and prepare to start over. Because I think it was so difficult the first 2 years because I kept on thinking to myself, oh, I've done this before, this should be easy. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned as a parent is that, and even with my second son, thinking, oh, it's another boy, I've got this, how bad can it be? But having the boys be so different and having to actually relearn parenting, I mean, there are some hard skills, changing diapers, managing your bottle or breastfeeding routine, that's the same. But interacting with the child, if we're told the hard skills, you got covered. The technical techniques, you're straight on that. The other stuff, the soft skills, let's just tell yourself you don't have a clue, be okay with not having a clue, and start fresh. Because I think thinking I knew it because I'd done it before was actually harder than realizing I didn't know it. And I think that would definitely be, I would tell a new parent that just throw out the soft skill stuff. You don't know, it's a new little person. They are going to be completely different from the other little person you created. And just it's the shock. It was the shock of thinking, how can I not do this? Like, I did this already. Why am I not better at this? Why is he having meltdowns? Why am I not getting the outcome that worked with his sister? And then again with his younger brother, why am I not working? It worked with his brother, why is it not working with him? But it was the slow realization. Every child is a curveball. You're starting over. There's just no other way to say it.
I think that's great advice for anybody who is going to have more than one child. The comparison trap, going, well, yeah, I did this with the first one, surely it's going to work with the second one. Yeah. Is just, you just do not want to go down that road, because it might work, but then again, it might not.
Yeah, it's just, and that's exactly it. There's no, I mean, we know all children are different, but we don't know all children are different. And the communication styles and the response levels and responses themselves are just so different, so different.
Oh, I do love that. I do love that. And so she may have asked you. You already said that your daughter is a mum already. Yes. Did you give her any advice before she had her first?
I did. What I said to her is, from a technical part, shall we say, from a how to run your household, try and get things in a way where it's as easy as possible for you. If you're going to nurse, then set up a way to do that. If you're going to bottle feed from the start, then have a bottle, as many bottles as you need so you don't have to wash them. The little things, as much clothing as you need so you don't have to wash every day, because that's such a treadmill to get caught up in. But I think from a emotional perspective, I said, listen, nobody knows how to do this. Nobody knows how to do this. I can share with you how it worked for me. You've seen me parent your brothers, but if that doesn't work for you, then throw it away. Figure out a different way. So there is no right or wrong. You're going to get lots of advice, but you go with what feels best. Because with very few exceptions, as long as you have the bond, nothing else matters. And you can't have the bond if you're stressed about doing it the right way. And I think hot on the heels of that piece of advice was just laugh it off. Laugh it off. You're going to drop the baby. The bathtub's going to be too hot. They're going to have a punami and you're not going to catch it. Or you're going to smell it and not feel like changing it because you're burnt out. And all that is okay. It is okay. Because as long as you feed and wash them enough, they will be fine. So just cut yourself some slack. If you're tired, sleep it off, and keep that sense of humor, because nobody knows.
Yeah, a sense of humor is probably your biggest,
and
your biggest superpower, I'm going to say, because
I would agree.
You've got to be able to laugh at everything and anything, because otherwise you would just want to just put the covers back over your head and go to sleep and avoid it all.
That's right. And it's, you come home sometimes after, like I've always worked with my children, not so much youngest because of COVID, but with the older two, I've always had a 9 to 5 job, which meant we were out the door at 7:30, not getting home till 5:30. It's a mad rush to get dinner, homework, bedtime routine. And I used to joke that bedtime was 8 o'clock because that fit in with our routine. And I used to say to them, if you get out of bed at after 8 o'clock, mummy has gone. It's only the mummy monster that is left. And mummy monster does not like little people after 8 o'clock at night. And it sounds horrendous, but it was my coping strategy, and they joke about it now. They joke about how horrible I was if they got out of bed without a fever and without diarrhea. Oh, no, you don't do that with mummy. No, no, no. It's not worth the mummy monster. But it was a survival tactic, right? Because as a single parent, you need to have that cutoff when you can go, oh, and just collapse. So, but they're good kids, they're good adults. So it's not all that bad. But you have to, I think, you have to know it's okay to just say, I'm done for the day. I love you, but I do not want to see you until I wake you up in the morning. Like, I'm done. Mummy is done for the day. Yeah,
because you're right. You do need the time to just let go of stuff and to be able to reset before you go to bed, because otherwise it just plays on your mind. You can't actually go to sleep, and we're not going to have a peaceful night's sleep anyway.
No,
because they might still get up, even if there is, they might not be very well. They might have a nightmare. Something might happen that means we as mums don't get a good night's sleep. So you need that time to unwind, and they don't sort of get it. So you do need to use language and things that they do get, so that they understand what you're trying to say.
Yes, yeah. And I think too, especially when kids don't start new things, new activities, new schools, there's always that first 2 or 3 weeks when you're waiting for them to get sick, and it's coming, right? It's just a matter of time. And then if you have multiple children, the first one gets better, gives it to the next one, and then they share it back and forwards for a couple of weeks on top of that, which is a delight unto itself. So you sleep in this kind of period. I've always found I sleep with one ear open, because you're waiting for that kind of cough that is going to turn into sick, if it's that kind of tummy bug that's going around. It's what I mean, that kind of full cough. So you're not sleeping, right? And I think you're right. I don't think mummies, once you're a mum, I mean, I used to be a really deep sleeper before I became a mum. And now I can sleep through anything except the kids making noise. So when they get out of bed, or when they cough, or they have sneezing during the night, don't you? So you're kind of that subconscious sleeping. Yeah, you don't have a full night's sleep until there's no kids in the house.
Yes. But that's in the distance for me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to enjoy what I've got now.
Well, this is it. This is it. I mean, I was lucky when my daughter was younger. She used to go to my mom on a Friday evening, but because my mom would pick her up from school, they'd have what they call my mom Omi, so that she'd have Omi time for Friday, and then I'd go and pick her up to take her to ballet at silly o'clock, because ballet lessons are only ever at silly o'clock on a Saturday morning, right? But sometimes I would go home, clean the house, and go to bed, because that was my Friday night treat to myself. And I was like, oh God. And people say, oh, how nice, your mom has your daughter, you can go out and party. And I did sometimes, but more often than not, it was just sit in front of the TV, or read a book, or have a bath with nobody knocking on the door. Oh, blissful, isn't it? Silly, but blissful.
No, I think that's the thing that we don't realize, or nobody necessarily tells you, do they? That as soon as you become a mum, you are never alone, ever.
That's right.
That's right. I mean, I don't shut the doors when I go to the bathroom.
No, I don't. I've given up.
There's no point.
But to be fair, I said it was my mom, and I'm in my 50s. So when I was younger, my mom in the bath was my time to go and chat to her. So I would sit on the toilet on the side of the bath, and we'd have our chat, and she'd, go about having her bath. And I used to think that was lovely, that I had this alone time with my mummy for 20 minutes. But as a mum, I now realize how absolutely irritating that must have been to her, that every time she went in the bath with her candles, there I was ready for a chat. But she never let on, like she never let on. And now, you know, as soon as I go and have a shower, go and sit in the loo, knock, 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 mum, a rundown of the day that despite the 20-minute drive home from school where it was monosyllabic, got nothing. Go lose, use the loo, whole story of the day, whole story of the day. But, you know, these are the memories when I'm older. I'll think, ah, yes, but they always shared their stories with me. I'll be grateful for.
It's nice to hear that children have their similarities, because it is.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think a classic is bedtime, literally about to
Yes.
kiss my child to, you know, good night, close the door. Oh no, I need to share. No,
Yeah.
you need to go to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Burning desire to tell you every piece of minutia that happened from the time you dropped them off to the time you picked them up. It's crazy, isn't it? Suddenly just floods to the surface.
Oh dear. Yes. So we're actually coming to the end of our podcasting time together. But before we go, I do have two last questions for you. The first one is, what three things would you like everyone to take away from our conversation today?
I think the biggest one, coming from the parent of a neatnik, is that it is okay to have a messy house and happy children. That is my biggest difference between the way I was parented and the way I parented my children. Mess can be sorted, but doing that extra activity, doing crafts, playing outside, that's much more worth it. I think common sense is not common. You find your way as a parent. So do what feels most natural to you. And I think the biggest thing, especially for single moms, is try to find 5-10 minutes, 2 minutes to remember who you were before you had children, because your children will thank you for that. You know, even if it's having a bath at midnight, just to have quiet and think about what you want out of things, your children will thank you for it, because then you're a happier mummy.
And it's true that a happy mum means a happy life, happy children.
That's right. That's right. And I think one little extra is that, you know, the media is quick to criticize women in so many different ways. But I think one thing I was told by my granny is that you never actively make a bad decision. You only make the best decision from what you know at the time. And I think that that's a thought that when I look back and think, ooh, could have done that differently. But at the time, that was the best option. Yeah.
Oh, what a lovely way to end. So finally,
yeah,
the audience will have been listening and saying, Joanna, she's amazing. I need to be able to connect with her. So many of her stories just resonate with me. So where can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn under Joanna Damani with Dyer in brackets, because that was my maiden name that some people know me by. And on Facebook also, Joanna Damani.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you, Joanna, for sharing
You're very welcome.
your journey and your stories with us. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast episode. And if you did, then of course, please share it with other mums. I have lots more resources for you that will help you on your journey through life. Just visit my website to access them, which is mummyonabreak.co.uk. You can also find out details about my book, Busy. Take care and see you the next time.